Friends, we need to have a conversation, actually kind of a series of conversations if I have opportunity, about some of the things that are going on in the world that are a little more hidden and most people aren't aware of them. And unfortunately, what this means is that people are going to be deceived when um, these things that they don't know are used against them in various ways. And specifically, what I'm talking about is restricted technology. There's a lot of restricted technology in our world right now. Um, and just to give you a quick list, I actually thought about maybe doing one big video on a bunch of different restricted technologies, but the problem is it's just too momentous of of a thing, so I need to break it down into little snippets. And so we're going to talk about the flat Earth claim that satellites are balloons. Satellites are balloons. And orbit isn't real. Orbit in the sense of finding that balancing point um, where things can just sort of cruise effortlessly above the Earth. Um, that is not real. That's a science fiction concept that was created by a writer, Arthur C. Clarke. Uh, the reality is that satellites are balloons. Satellites, the payload, whatever that is, communications, scientific apparatus, what have you, weapons platforms, they're suspended above our Earth realm using balloons. I'm going to demonstrate that to you today in this video. But there's a whole host of what we call restricted technologies that either people don't understand because we've been lied to about the capabilities, and understand that this is standard practice for our government and the military to lie about things. For example, my dad was in the Navy. He was a junior officer on a nuclear powered submarine, which was also a boomer. In other words, it had nuclear weapons on it. Um, and We probably will need to have a little discussion about whether nuclear weapons are real or not, because I see that idea going around these days. But when he was in the Navy, there was all manner of things that were classified that you couldn't talk about. And one thing, for example, he said is specifically you're not supposed to take or share pictures of vessel propellers. That was a very classified thing because the design of propellers, they're designed to reduce cavitation, which is the formation of bubbles. If a propeller underwater spins up really fast, it creates bubbles. That cavitation process is noisy. And so there are these stealthy propeller designs that are designed to not cavitate, even when spinning at high rates of speed. And the design of those is highly classified. So there's all manner of things that are classified. And that's just because nations and entities want to keep their technology from getting into the hands of their enemies. And so it shouldn't surprise us that there's all manner of restricted technology that we, the people, the ordinary populace of the world, just don't even know about, period. And so I'm going to give you a short list here off the top of my head of some restricted technologies. Now, some of these people have become more and more aware of in the past few years, and others people are still questioning or not aware of at all. And then others are, conspiracy theories or whatever. I'm telling you, all this stuff's real. I've looked into it all myself. The things that I'm about to list here. And I know that these things do exist, and we're going to slowly, as I have opportunities, start knocking these off the list, and I'll do little mini videos on them. Although, you know me, my videos do tend to get towards the longer side of things as they go, but, bear with me. We need to talk about these things because otherwise, there's these technologies that people should be aware of that have been around for decades. Um, and they're being hidden from a lot of people, or a lot of people have seen little glimpses or elements of them here and there, but really haven't thought it through and put two and two together and come to the right conclusions about this stuff. And so they're going to be deceived. Oh, this is aliens. Oh, this is, yada yada, extra dimensionals or whatever. Um, Ignorance allows the establishment to spin a narrative around these technologies, or even just to use them to completely misrepresent. So, for example, there is the ability to project images on the sky, both holograms and actual images. That technology exists. And so if you didn't know that and you saw something projected on the sky, you might think that it was real, or you might think that some supernatural power was sending you a message. Uh, but no, this is human technology. So keep that in mind. Don't be deceived. Voice of God technology is very real. They can actually, uh, from what I understand, cause vibrations in certain parts of the inner ear using technology, and so they have the ability to just speak an audible voice right into your head, or channel a sound right into your head as well. Um, People, if you've been watching videos on social media and paying attention the last 5 or 10 years or so, you've probably heard sky trumpet type sounds as well. There is technology that can be used to project sounds, audible sounds, not just sounds, in one person's head, but that many people are hearing over a wide area, and that can project those long distances. The thought in the flat earther community is that they're projecting this using large arrays like HARP or other similar installations, and they're projecting these sounds and these vibrations um, long distance and bouncing them off of the firmament dome. That is a very real possibility. So that sort of thing exists as well. Another very restricted technology is anti-gravitics. Yeah, that is a technology that's been around for a while. And I don't know exactly what all the different craft look like right now. There's talk of tic-tac shapes. The saucer design goes back decades and decades. The Air Force, for example, had a saucer program, and other branches of the Department of Defense, and supposedly those programs were scrapped and were unsuccessful. But I actually think the exact opposite happened, that they showed so much promise that they were quietly disappeared and then continued, but in the dark. Certain people took over those things, and it is now restricted technology. Um, it is next gen technology, and every once in a while we see sort of beta tests of this technology where, during Navy or Air Force exercises out over the ocean or wherever, they'll be doing drills with various troops, various vessels, various aircraft, and what will happen? Well, these UFOs or UAPs or whatever acronym they use now will show up, crash the party, and outperform every current generation technology that's on that simulated battlefield. What's going on there? Well, the a higher level of the military or the establishment is using higher level toys. They're testing next gen technology against current generation technology. And understand, they already have all the next gen technologies to trump current gen technologies. And this is just how warfare works. The United States, for example, we've invested in communications and in air power. So, our carriers, our fighter jets, and our, satellite network and things like that. And so, what do our enemies do? They invest in technologies that can trump our technologies. So, the Russians are into missile technologies, especially long range missile weapons. And the that would be the Russians, and then the Chinese have invested heavily in EMP technologies to counter our American communications technologies. This is the way weapons develop. It's a cat and mouse game. Whoever gets the one up on the other guy, and if you can keep your weapon secret long enough, and how effective it is until you actually have to use it. We saw that with the atom bomb. Um, that element of surprise and the extreme generational leap, so to speak, in the technological capability is often enough to catapult one uh, empire above another as a new superpower. So the rise of the United States as the world's only superpower was marked by the use of the atomic bomb, and I actually think that the rise of the next superpower will be marked by the use of next generation weapons that there's no trump for at the time that they're deployed. Um, Now, we may have to have a little discussion as to whether nuclear weapons actually exist or not, because that is apparently in dispute now. Um, but anyway, other types of technology that absolutely exist, visual cloaking technologies. And for lack of a better way to put it, optical jamming technologies that interfere with cameras, digital cameras. Um, so if you've ever seen a movie like Predator, where this alien comes to Earth and is in the jungle and is hunting this team of special forces commandos, and the Predator has this optical camouflage that sort of you can, if you really look for it, you can see it, but it helps it to blend optically into the background. It makes it really hard to see. That technology exists. It's been in development for decades, and it now exists for aircraft and for it's man portable. There are man portable invisibility cloaks now. Um, and there is technology that can actually jam digital cameras and things like that and cause them to malfunction and take garbled or what is the word I'm looking for? Erratic images. Basically, cause those digital cameras not to capture what they're supposed to be capturing. That technology exists, and I have collected evidence that it exists both for aircraft and for you know individual level usage, like soldier level invisibility cloaks. Um, I have evidence of both of those. Other technologies that are restricted that do exist, geoengineering. This is a broad category. It just means weather manipulation. Um, this sort of technology does go back over 100 years to when people realized they could start widespread controlled forest fires to get smoke particulates into the atmosphere to cause precipitation. That was done. Um, and the government, in various documents that have been made public one way or another, I've read some of them myself. They acknowledge that controlling the weather is a goal. There have been stories, if you pay attention to this sort of stuff, there have been stories of water rights disputes in Africa where these nations are suing each other and there's court cases and stuff because some nations are actually claiming that other nations are stealing their water right out of the air using geoengineering, causing rainfall. For example, you might have a moist air mass moving over a region. One country decides to cause that air mass to release its moisture as rain on their country. That means all the other countries downwind aren't getting that moisture. And those countries feel that that's not fair, that's an abusive use of technology. There's actually court cases about stuff like that. Yeah, human beings can control rain and precipitation under certain conditions. I'm not going to say that it's a complete 100% godlike control of the weather. I don't think that exists yet, but I think they control a lot more of it than they are letting on. And it's for decades been a goal of theirs to do this. And there's various ways that this is done. Cloud seeding, for example, which is flying up and spreading chemicals into the atmosphere that cause precipitation. Um, This is tied in with chemtrail technology, which is very real. I do have footage of chemtrail controllers installed in aircraft. And so chemtrail technology is just airplanes putting particulates into the atmosphere. And if you're paying attention to all the nonsense propaganda coming out from those who say that global warming is a big deal, or I should say that man-made global warming is a big deal, and we need to be doing things to combat it. This is really worthy of a whole other video, in all honesty. There's all manner of wackiness going on right now. For example, there are wildfires being intentionally set by these eco-terrorists because they're trying to push this agenda, and they're stirring these things up to support as evidence to support their agenda, even though it really undermines it when you start looking into this stuff and realizing it's arsonists setting these forest fires. but they're doing it in order to get these forest fires in the news. Then they can say, "Oh, it's global warming," yada yada. Um, there's a lot of deception and smoke and mirrors stuff going on. But if you've ever really paid attention to things, um, the government is now openly floating this idea of we need to put particulates into the atmosphere that make the atmosphere more reflective so that the sun's heat is reflected instead of absorbed by the earth, and this will help with the global warming problem. Well, they are just now floating the idea of starting these programs. The reality is they have been doing these programs for decades. These are chemtrails. And there's a couple different ways that these have been done. It used to be that there were dedicated tanks of chemicals and so forth that, there were sprayer systems equipped on the planes, and they would just turn these things on or off to spray at certain times, and in certain patterns and stuff like that. Now it's a little bit different. I believe that the technology has shifted so that there are just additives in jet fuel now. So virtually all planes, that are using certain types of jet fuels anyway, um, can be putting these chemtrails out there just by virtue of flying and releasing the normal byproducts of their engines running. Um, like I said, that's worthy of a whole other video. I just wanted to mention it though because it is a thing. It is very real. The term you're looking for is geoengineering. That is weather manipulation technologies. Chemtrails is part of that category. It's all very real. The government has been uh, working with this stuff for decades, and various different sub technologies in this broader category you're going to be hearing more and more about going forward. And it is scary because they are manipulating and altering our Earth realm without our consent. They're doing things to the air, they're doing things to the soil, they're doing things to the water. Did you agree to it? Did I agree to it? I certainly did not. And this affects all of us. It affects our food. It affects the health of our kids. Um, it affects the quality of life. It affects diseases that we're going to have and that will affect our lifespans. Um, and some of these, really, this is an effort to poison the world. And while some people involved in these agendas might actually think that it's for good purposes or whatever, the ends justify the means, the reality is they are deceived and they are poisoning this world, and it's going to lead to death. And that's intentional because ultimately the one who's really pulling the strings behind the scenes, that is Satan, the adversary, the devil, Lucifer. He hates humanity, and he hates everything that God has done, and God's created this earth and God's created humanity. So what do you think the adversary is going to want to do? He's going to want to tear all that down and rebuild it in his own image. Given his choice, he would destroy or corrupt everything that God has created. That is the bottom line, and that is the real reason behind so much of what we see going on in our world. Let me think off the top of my head if I can think of any other um, restricted technologies that I should discuss off the top of my head that I can think of that I've actually looked into myself and gathered evidence of. Um, and if I forget a few here, I will hopefully, Lord willing, as I have the time, come back and do more videos on other ones as well. But we've already kind of spent a lot of time just in the intro to this video, so I want to dive into the substance and leave you with some stuff here. So some things we gotta talk about. Firstly, balloons are satellites. Um, or I should say satellites are balloons. Satellites are balloons. So orbit as a concept of, just this huge mass of metal flying around a globe Earth in space at a sweet spot, so it's just able to keep going around and around without, that is nonsense. It's a science fiction concept invented by Arthur C. Clarke. That is not the reality of things. And I can prove it to you from NASA's own language. This is Echo, NASA's first communications satellite. I've talked about this before. So look at this thing. Look at it closely. At a glance, it looks like a giant metal sphere, but it's not. It's actually a silvery balloon envelope. And you can see the tube over here that's being used to fill this thing up. It is a balloon, and they admit that Echo, NASA's first communication satellite, it was a balloon. It was a passive spacecraft. Passive. What does that mean? It's a balloon. Spacecraft is really just in all honesty, it's a term that is meaningless. It's a craft that's in space. Well, that's any craft, isn't it? That would be a car. Then would be a spacecraft. A boat would be a spacecraft, or anything in the sky would be a spacecraft. Outer space as a concept doesn't exist as we are told that it does. That's all I'm going to say on that. Anyway, they say, though, it's a passive spacecraft based on a balloon design created by an engineer, made of mylar. The satellite measured. So notice this. They admit it's a balloon, but they keep using the terms satellite and orbit interchangeably with balloon. Um, Anyway, once in orbit, residual air inside the balloon expanded, and the balloon began its task of reflecting radio transmissions from one ground station back to another. Echo 1 satellites like this one generated a lot of interest because they could be seen with the naked eye from the ground as they passed overhead. So this is early level satellite technology. It is much better today. Satellites are so far above us, so far above planes even, that they're not visible with the naked eye generally any longer. And so when one, for reasons unknown, drifts down into visual range, it is an unusual occurrence. And so remember 2023 when the Chinese balloon, or a spy balloon, um, flew over most of the continental U.S. What was going on with that? Well, here you can see what it was. It was a very large envelope, several hundred feet across, with a large suspended payload that happens to look like a satellite. Okay, that's interesting. Now understand that a balloon of this size, several hundred feet in diameter, can carry a payload that is the equivalent to a 747 jet. The lifting power of these things is not inconsequential. So yeah, these things could carry, and I'm using this term in air quotes right now as I say this, space stations. This technology can carry satellites, and that's what we see here. It is a satellite, only it's connected to a balloon. That's mighty, mighty interesting. One of the number one questions that is asked on Google is this: why would the Chinese use a balloon when they have satellites? Well, folks, you have just hit on the question right there. It's because satellites are balloons. What you saw, this Chinese spy balloon, is actually a satellite. It is a satellite. For some reason, we don't know why, it drifted down into visual range. An unusual thing. Most of them are way up there and we don't see them, and they're recycled out every once in a while. It's my understanding that their lifetime up there is sometimes several weeks, and then they can be deployed from the air from planes, and they can be collected in the air and replaced periodically. The satellite can be maintained, the balloon can be repaired, refilled, whatever. All that stuff needs to be done to keep those things going. So the 2023 Chinese balloon incident, that was a satellite. You were seeing a satellite. And I'm going to show you some other examples in a little bit here. Let me just... helium production. So the top helium producers in the world, NASA's the single biggest buyer of helium. Why is that? Because they're putting a lot of balloons up, and they openly admit that they have a balloon program. But what they don't as openly admit is that their satellites are all suspended from balloons as well. That's why they're using so much of this stuff. And what is the number two entity that uses the most helium? Well, it would be an entity. You would think that also, if satellites are actually balloons, it's going to be an entity that has a lot of satellites. Well, guess what? The number two entity that uses helium is the DoD, the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense. Not surprising. Why? Because balloons are satellites. Satellites are balloons. There you go. I'm going to show you some videos here just to to hammer this reality home. In case you haven't heard this before or seen this before, here's some videos that I personally just pulled up on this subject. I like finding videos of satellite crashes because what's interesting is you'll notice anytime that you see a satellite crash, video footage of it, you'll find a tether that tethers that satellite, that payload, to the thing that's carrying the payload, a balloon. Let's look through these and I'll show you for yourself.
This baby fell out of the sky and landed in our yard.
This farm in Saginaw County, Michigan became an unlikely landing zone for a spacecraft.
Never know what's going to happen.
Nancy and Dan Welke are used to being greeted by their horses each morning, but on Saturday, a different four-legged object grabbed their attention.
So, I'm not going to necessarily play the entirety of all these videos. I'll show you enough to get you the gist of it. So this is a little space selfie satellite thingy. But what's interesting about it, you've got the payload, you've got this harness here. I don't remember if this particular video, because sometimes these news crews will intentionally keep from showing the balloon canopy. It's usually over off on the side, draped over a tree or something like that. Now, most of the videos that I have here, they do actually show the balloon canopy at some point in the video. I don't remember if this one does or not, but here you've got your satellite payload and you've got the harness that connects it to the balloon. We'll keep watching this one just so that we can see if they show the balloon envelope.
The couple believe the satellite belonged to Samsung and told us reps flew in today to make sure they were okay and no damage was done. The company telling NBC News, Samsung Europe's space selfie balloon came back to...
And see, they do admit this sometimes here and there if you're paying attention. So I guess they did in their public statement here.
During this planned descent of the balloon to land in the U.S., weather conditions resulted in an early soft landing in a selected rural area. Just days ago in London, Samsung hosted a star-studded event, launching the world's first selfie in space with the help of model Cara Delevingne. The mission is to give others a chance to join her with their face in space.
Okay, so this one maybe wasn't as illuminating. It looks like they may have been a little more upfront about it than others. All right, let's look at another satellite crash. Here we go. And you can clearly see the tether there, draped up over these trees, and then the balloon canopy in the background there. And the size of these things varies incredibly. So this one's a relatively small one. The Chinese spy balloon, huge. The balloon itself was 300 to 400 feet in diameter, as I understand it, and the payload was the size of a jet. But yeah, you can clearly see just the draped cable there. It connects the payload, or the satellite proper, to the lifter, the balloon. Alright, there's not much more to see in that particular video clip. Here's a failed launch.
Mission manager, SPC, negative growth, negative shoot.
Copy, we see the visual.
Impact at 585.
So if you heard that, negative shoot, they said, negative shoot. They were probably launching this out of a plane, and there would have been some kind of, there's actually a term for it. They will use a chute, a small parachute, to drag out the main balloon mass, and it's all arranged in such a way that because they can deploy these things from the air. I've watched video clips of it, them coming off the back of planes and stuff, and you can probably find this stuff online for yourself as well. Um, but what happened here was the chute did not deploy, didn't pull the balloon out, and as a result, this satellite crashed. Let's find another one that has a balloon envelope.
Aí, ó.
Yeah, here we go.
Satélite caiu aqui na Jacami. Tá vendo o globo? O globo.
Here we go.
Vem
Got a
globo.
satellite and a balloon canopy. You might say, how does this work? Well, there's layers up there above where active weather takes place. And so if you can get stuff high enough into these relatively calm air layers, stuff can just kind of circle or circuit or orbit, if you want to call it that, above our flat Earth realm, high above. But yeah, you can see it. He's got cable to the balloon envelope.
Aí, ó.
That's what satellites are. Here's another one. I don't think there was sound for this. I'm just going to mute it. But again, you have the body of the satellite, and if you pay enough attention here, you will see, yeah, the canopy and tethers and all this other stuff. That is what satellites are. Satellites are balloons. Thanks for watching. I don't think this particular video is going to come as a surprise to many of you, but if I have opportunity to put together more videos on other restricted technologies, I think we're going to get into some territory that you guys will find very interesting. Especially, so Occam's razor. I want you just to think about this. Every time you see something that's clearly technological and you're like, oh man, is that a UFO? Is that aliens from outer space? Is that extra dimensionals? Occam's razor says that the simplest explanation to a phenomenon is the most likely to be the correct explanation. So we know that human beings create technology, and we live here in this Earth realm. So if we see technology in this Earth realm, what's the most likely conclusion? That it's human technology. Just because it's not technology that's familiar or that has been disclosed to the general public doesn't mean that it's more likely to be alien technology. No, we already know that our governments keep all manner of secrets from us and classify all kinds of stuff, including especially military technology. So the fact that we see technology that is unknown to us shouldn't surprise us at all. It should fit right in there in your knowledge paradigm, and you should think, okay, I'm seeing something that I can't really explain. It's clearly technological. It is most likely human dark technology or restricted technology that we the people just aren't being told about. Don't let them deceive you into thinking that some alien invasion is coming or some nonsense like that. Don't let them rile you up into a panic about all that stuff. Deception's the name of the game, and that's a big part of why they are intentionally keeping these technologies secret from us. Because it allows, if we don't even know where we live, the nature of our reality, things like that, it's very easy for us to be deceived, manipulated, and controlled, and that's really what it's all about. All right, well, thank you for your time. I hope this has been interesting to you guys. Have a good one.